A year ago, when I said that I would stake my entire professional career on the fact that Brigitte Macron, the current First Lady of France, was born a man, there were many people, of course, who did not believe me because that just sounds crazy. I want you to come to Tennessee so bad. Bring this lawsuit as you would have to the great state of Tennessee. Bring it to the volunteer state, We still have the good old boys here. And don't even waste your money getting a courier to file. I'll file it for you. I'll be your courier, okay? I'll run down to the courthouse and file the lawsuit for you, but you chose the wrong journalist. Candace is not intimidated. No, I am not intimidated. In fact, I would describe myself as positively elated about this opportunity, Mr. and Mr. Macron, okay? If you promise me that you two will show up hand in hand, okay, that you will come down to a state where we still have the good old boys, and you'll explain to them, Brigitte, that you think 15-year-olds boys can be sexy. I really hope they file that lawsuit. I really hope that Brigitte Macron ordains himself so bold as to arrive into the great state of Tennessee.
In March of 2024, Candace Owens made a statement that rang around the world. She said she is willing to stake her entire professional reputation on the fact that Brigitte Macron is in fact a man. This statement was made around the time she was fired from Daily Wire. Following her departure, she launched her podcast in June of 2024, and in December 2024, she began a multiple-part series, Becoming Brigitte. In this platform, she has repeatedly explained this claim. Listen, her claim has led to a defamation lawsuit filed by Emmanuel and Brigitte Macron in the Superior Court of Delaware in the US in July 2025. This lawsuit alleges that she used the false statements to promote her independent platform, gain notoriety, and make money, and has waged a campaign of global humiliation against the couple. Most people are just catching up to Candace Owens right now as this lawsuit went viral. It has been spoken about from Russia to South Korea to North Korea to the North Pole to the South Pole. This has brought Candace Owens a spotlight right to the temple of her face, which has opened a lot of scrutiny into her life and everything. She has declared last week that tomorrow, Monday, she is going to launch a part 2 of this series, Becoming Brigitte. Now, she is not the origin of this series. The original author of this series released a 6-part, and his name is Xavier Poussard. She is barely getting it from this person. But then, due to her popularity and the way she explains things, definitely it counts. She has a way of explaining things. It has gained notoriety. And so I was thinking, those of you who have not followed up this lawsuit, who have not participated, who don't know the origin, why don't I take you on a ride? Let's summarize the part 1 of this so that by the time we get into part 2, we are well caught up on what is going on. In this, I am going to dig deep into every episode from the time she started before even episode 1, because most people start from episode 1 thinking that is where, no. It started way in 2024. So let's get into it. The first time she started hinting on something like this was after the Olympics game that took place in France. She released an episode in July 29th, 2024 titled The Olympics Exposed Brigitte Macron. In this, she said that the Olympics game, especially the opening ceremony, which was, by the way, a demonic way of mimicking the Last Supper, even though they came and claimed that. She claimed that this ceremony was to honor Brigitte Macron. She talked about how bad and terrible it was that this particular event mimicked the Last Supper. mocking Christianity. And she also mentions the aspect of why it has become so easy for people to mock Christianity and go scot-free with it. It is now a trend. Every artist does it, and it is really deplorable, to say the least. She shared also her theory of evolution and what she thinks about it. She talked against atheism and says that those who are atheists believe in something. That is why they are atheists. Then she talked about the oligarchs of the world who run the world, who practice transgenderism and sexual rituals. I know we are already getting deep into a lot of things. She also brought a picture of Brigitte's family, and she said that Brigitte is a man. She talked about how the world is run by a lot of sexually false men who are actually gay. She insinuated Zelensky is one of them, Macron is one of them. And she also gave us on the aspect of people making mockery of Christianity, especially with regards to the French opening ceremony of the Olympics. She presented a video of Andrew Tate, of all people. Like, I don't know why she went to Andrew Tate. She has this strange allegiance to Andrew Tate I don't get. I don't know what it is, but anyway, Andrew Tate is friends with her husband, or was friends with her husband. There is an ick there. I don't know. I'll leave that hanging. We will get to that someday. After this, she digs into the Jacob Frank's case, which I read through it, and if you want me to make a video on that, please, I will. And then she asked why there is the Bohemian Groove in California, which is another, you know what, let me leave that there. She talked about the Leo Frank murder of a Catholic girl, and then talks about why the ADL continues to protect Leo Frank's image to this day, trying to frame it other than the aspect that Leo Frank murdered the girl. And they tried to pin it on a black guy who was like a janitor, and it did not work, because this is one thing. If a black guy was a white man, rich white man, tried framing a black guy in those days and did not make it, that black guy was as innocent as Jesus, God, and any other thing you can say is innocent can be, because that would have been an easy fix for Leo Frank. Then it did not work. Then after this time, she tries and concentrates on Kamala Harris. That was another hit list on Candace's list, okay? Kamala Harris was another person on her hit list. Then on July 30th, 2024, she came again for the first time, and she talked more about the occult history. She talked about more occult history exposed. She spoke about how she is wired to speak the truth, and she talked about a certain ball player called Curry Oben who posted a link of a video talking about a documentary, and he had a lot of backlash coming after him. Not Jeff Bezos, the person who made it public, but he published that link of the documentary titled From Hebrews to Negroes, and they gave him basically 6 commands or demands for him to be able to be welcomed back into doing his job, playing ball and earning money, or living his life. And that is another situation. All of this, listen, I know that it sounds like we're jumping here and there. All of this is building to something, and I need you to pay attention. All of this is building to something. She also talked about the loss of black identity, and then the cabal and the sexual rituals. And then she really dug deep into the sexual rituals and the transgenderism and the cabal and the elite that are controlling the world, who are also the ones who are promoting degeneracy and all of that. And in that episode, you could see that she is building for one thing and one thing only, for when she will start exposing what is the series she is working on. Well, while she is working on this series and dropping all of these hints and making these bold declarations, the Macrons reacted. They sent her a strongly worded letter, or according to her, a threat for her to stop talking about it and all of that. So this letter was sent to her, and then they told her, hey, Candace, we are threatening to stop talking about us, mais il faut laisser ça hush hush, ne parle pas de ça. D'accord? No, the next day, Candace was on her show telling us everything about it. She uploaded it to her website, okay? And she was telling us everything about the letter, what they said, and she prepared her response, gave us a hint of it the next day. My God. She discussed the Macron sending her a legal threat and insisting that she keeps it hush hush. Then she calls him weak. And then she says she is an American. And who is Macron? Who are you, man? Damn, that girl is crazy. Then she discusses Macron's rise to power. Talks about how he maneuvered his way. He had the mightiest hand of touch on him, constantly moving from the time his education. He was not the brightest in class, but he got a top grade and the class rioted. How he went working for a bank, and he was not a Rothschild's bank, to say the least. And he was not the brightest banker, but he rose in positions to a very good position there, despite not being the best banker at all. And then, before we know it, bagada boom, bagada bim, il est président de France. Il est président de la République de France. So how he and his wife rose to power and then recognized the holes in their story or alleged love story, because that is not a story. That is an alleged love story. Then when she did that, she left us again. And on the 31st of January 2025, she dropped the bomb. She dropped the bomb, Becoming Brigitte, the introduction. She said on her website, the website she has, candice.locals.com, she has started receiving a lot of DDO attacks from France, and that the media tried to paint her adjacent to a school shooter. And then she said the legal threat, she discussed the legal threat she received from the Elysee Palace. And then she talked about the 21 questions she asked them in her reply, which they did not answer. She talked about a couple of people who have also been involved in discussing the Macrons, and it did not end well for them. For example, Elizabeth Ferrara, a 56-year-old French journalist, who said the media was not accurately reporting the age gap or alleged love story of the Macrons, and that Brigitte could be prosecuted for sleeping with a minor. But then, this is the caveat. The statute of limitation for persecuting Brigitte ends in 2025. But do you know what happened? That lady had to disappear. She had to go. The next person who was involved in this is Natasha Ray, and she was just helping Xavier Poussard, the original person who created the series Becoming Brigitte. Because Candace in no way is the origin of this. The original person is Xavier Poussard. That is the original person. Natasha Ray, who only assisted Xavier Poussard in the 6-part series, had her lawyer attacked in court, all types of trumped up problems, and then, thank God, at least Natasha Ray has not been deleted, but she is suffering from cancer. God help her. Wishing her a painless time with what she's going through. Then she talked about the original person, Xavier Poussard, the journalist, who put together this 6-part series on Becoming Brigitte, and how he became so harassed. And now Candace says she is the next victim of this. She also mentioned that the letter sent to her complains that she lies about the Macron's sexuality. She also uploads this particular letter, which they told her to keep it short, hush, hush, hush. Candace, please don't talk about this. Candace is on her podcast. Like, subscribe, and follow, as I am going to tell you everything. Candace has no filter. So she talked about that letter, and then she also uploads it on her website. At this point, Candace's confidence is at 1,000. Her energy is on 1,002. And do you know what she said on this particular episode? She said she is not intimidated as the Macrons want her to be. No. She gave us a sneak peek of the response she sent to them. Very powerful response, asking them thought-provoking questions. And she said she is not intimidated, but she is positively elated. And she tells them to file a lawsuit. Then let them come and see her, let them come and file a lawsuit. In fact, she tells them that she is going to help them to file that lawsuit. Let them not even worry looking for a courier or paying a courier. No, she will do it. She will walk and pay it. But this is this thing. This is the thing that was very interesting that I noticed. She kept insisting that they should come to Tennessee and file the lawsuit. Well, stay tuned. You will see the turnaround of events when this lawsuit drops. This is another thing she talked about. She also mentioned how you remember the time that Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence was raided by the FBI, the feds, because they were looking for documents which he took home, and he said it was homework, in quotes, that he took home. According to what Candace says in this episode, that time, the reason why they raided it is because Trump bragged about knowing something about the Macrons' sex life and their alleged naughty ways. She said the reason they were running to Trump's house is because Trump had discovered some documents, and then people were wondering, trying to decipher what is it that Trump discovered about the Macron sex life and their naughty ways. We would like to know that, because this information is too spicy to leave alone. Now, this is another thing she reminded us about. She reminded us about the Summer Olympics ritual. And she talked about it, and she said in the threat letter, they say it is not mimicking the Last Supper. But this is the strange thing. One of the artists who participated in the Last Supper, Barbara Bush, who is an LGBT person, she on her IG said something about the New Testament, and then below the post she made, she put the picture of a Last Supper and a picture of them performing the opening ceremony, which means they were actually mimicking it. It's not something, you cannot tell me that one of the lead actors in a movie does not know what they're acting. Definitely they have been told the script and what to interpret of it. So they must have known that they are mimicking the Last Supper. So what is it they are talking about? Now, another person of interest, who she brings up, is Thomas Jory, the one who put together the Summer Olympics together. This person was handpicked by who? No other person but Brigitte Macron. That is the person who picked this thing. And do you know the strange thing about Thomas Jory? Well, Thomas Jory has history that is not very palatable. And that is just the normal thing with most of the people who are surrounding Macrons. Don't worry. When we start unveiling them, every time you'll be shocked. But then the Macrons will tell you, don't worry, we have more where that came from. So if you're worried about Thomas, don't worry. More is coming because they have more where that is coming from. She also discussed the alleged love story, in quotes, of Brigitte and Macron. Brigitte was a teacher in a school, saw a 14-year-old child and said, j'aime ça. Il est beau, très mignon. C'est lui que je veux. Oui, 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 oui. Il est très, très mignon. Je veux cette petite. A baby. I'm telling you, the parents had to take that child and send to Paris just to avoid the situation. But you know what? No. They had to, Brigitte looked for a way to enter this child's head, and the child finally, she married him. How did it happen in France that a 39-year-old woman pursued a 15-year-old child, and then it is allowed, and they call it, on their websites, they actually say romance or romantic love story or whatever they called it. Like France, everything you touch turns to everything France touches turns to zero macabo. Je vous dis, les Français ne sont pas sérieux. Qu'est-ce qui arrive dans le France? This is pedophile number 1, Brigitte Macron. I don't know how you will slice it or dice it or serve it, but every time anyone eats it, it is disgusting. Not only to the mouth, to the nose, to every sense of it. It is disgusting that a 39-year-old looked at a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old and said, yeah, c'est lui que je veux, il est mignon. Merde. You know what? That is traumatizing me on another level. I'm working on a video of that and I keep keeping it and going back to it because it's too traumatizing. Now, this is another thing. After moving into the Élysée Palace, Brigitte wanted a certain strange image of a penis statue to be erected in the Notre Dame Cathedral. She picked a carpet as well from a pedophile artist called Claude Levard. And the name of the carpet was what? The Black Sand. This carpet and this guy, he has a strange way of, maybe, how do I say, romanticizing pedophilia in his works. And do you know what? Lo and behold, it wasn't long. It started coming out allegations on him and all those type of things around him. And I know you're thinking, man, that might be a coincidence. Hold Macron's beer because they have more pedophiles to unveil to us. The book Macron chose for his presidential portrait was by André Gide. If you know who André Gide is, this man does not only glorify pedophilia, he loves it. He is what they call a pederast. A pederast is different between a pederast and a pedophile is that a pederast likes only little boy and then a pedophile likes little boys and little girls. That's the difference. Disgusting. Who are those who sit and come up with these names? To name this kind of individuals, I don't know. Whew, Jesus, help me. Now, this little petty André Gide guy book was one of the books Macron picked for his portrait. And some people be like, well, maybe it was an error. No. I went to a website by BBC, British Broadcasting Corporation, and it is there. Macron is arranging everything for his portrait. In fact, that video is titled Behind the Scenes of the Presidential Portrait. He is there arranging it. So it is not something like it was an error. No. That was intentional act. And before we almost screamed and said, Lord, help us. What kind of demonic activity is this? Oh, the Macrons say, hold my beer. We have more pedophiles to unveil. They brought in another one. There is this guy called Olivier Duhamel. Olivier Duhamel is a very rich man in Europe. Very rich. Tippity top. The way Candace posts it, and even the way Trump likes to say it. Tippity top of European rich people. He was one of the people who supported Macron from the time he started his campaign to the time he ended. He was there when Brigitte chose who will become the Prime Minister of France. And people in France were like, why? Pourquoi c'est Brigitte qui fait le choix? Pourquoi? Mais qu'est-ce qui se passe ici? Non, on dit que Brigitte, elle est grande, hein? Elle est forte dans la France. Elle a beaucoup de force, hein? Oui, c'est ça qu'on dit. She chose the Prime Minister. And who was there? Olivier Duhamel. Duhamel and Macron are so close. They are that close. Do you know what happened? Out of nowhere, the stepdaughter of this particular Olivier man came out with a book talking about how this man molested her brother, who is the stepson of this Olivier man, Camille. The boy was 13 or 14 when he was allegedly assaulting this child. And the whole thing went into serious investigations. Investigations were carried out. A lot of things were talked about. And do you know what? Lo and behold, Olivier Duhamel admitted to this. I told myself, maybe there's an error here. I went to search it out. France 24 has a full article they published. Okay, they published this article on the 24th, not the 20, on the 14th of the 4th month of 2021. Okay, and this article says French intellectual Olivier Duhamel confesses to sexually abusing stepson. Yeah, those are the people Macrons are with. And I know you're thinking, well, a few pedophiles around them. Don't worry, there is more where that came from, because the Macrons, they are not going to be limited on supply of pedophiles to surround themselves with. Well, what am I talking about? They are a pedophile couple. Because Brigitte, in no aspect in this world will ever tell me she was, one, a teacher, she was, two, a married 39-year-old with children, 3 children, and one of those children was in Macron's class. You did not let Macron date your daughter. No, you went for the child. There is no way you can slice it or dice it or serve it that will make it tasteful. No, it's disgusting. They are a pedophile couple. They like surrounding themselves with pedophiles. And that is it. The guy admitted to this. Lo and behold, here came the caveat. He did this admission when the statute of limitation for him to be persecuted for assaulting this child had just passed. Just the way I'm sure if this one about, I'm sure this one with Brigitte, she's just praying for 2025 to finish so that she can know that the statute of limitation for her to be persecuted for assaulting a teenage child, like Macron was at that time, would have passed. Yeah. Then, it did not end there. Okay? It did not end there. Like she also mentioned again the aspect of Isabella Ferreira, the journalist, who accidentally deleted herself, and nobody believed it, because even her friend was online saying that my friend did not delete herself. She will never delete herself. Then talked about Natasha Ray, who has gone through medical attacks, and now Brigitte Macron wants to disturb her. Then she talked about how Xavier Poussard has been harassed through audits. He was harassed so much through audits that his sponsors dropped him. They raided his mom's house and searched it and scattered it just so that they can harass him into letting go of the issues that are at hand. And my number one on this is that Brigitte Macron is a pedophile. What were you doing with a small child? That is a 14, 15-year-old child. What were you doing with him? 15-year-old child. What are you doing with him? You're 39, married, with 3 children who are older, some are older than that child. I promise you. Where your section in hell. Let's comme ça. Ça sera grave. Mon Dieu. Let's go now into what episode 1 titled Gaslighting the Public. Because c'est grave, c'est très grave. This was published on February 4th, 2025. And when I tell you this episode is deep, please bring your thinking caps on, adjust your membranes to a lot of calculations and recalculations, and bring on your conspiracy theory as well as dissecting theory heart on, because this is going to be crazy. She starts by mentioning that her website has been attacked again, and then boom, she receives a second worded letter from the Macrons, and this one is still like a response to the first one they gave her, because they sent her first one, she sent her response with questions, 21 questions she asked them, and then they sent another letter to her. And she keeps this letter for later. But you know what? Let's look at something that is very important. She says that a lot of people have been reacting to the introductory episodes. And she goes in with a lot of reactions to it. And then she talks about how did Emmanuel Macron, an unknown person, how did he manage to scoodle the campaign of Françoise Fillon? Françoise Fillon was one of the people who already had a shoe into the presidency. Most people found him more favorable during the time when he ran with Emmanuel Macron. So she was looking like, how did Emmanuel Macron sidetrack this guy? How did he bypass him so fast? How did it happen? And then he compared it to the unprecedented rise of President Barack Obama before into power. But then she looked at the difference between the two, given that Barack Obama already had a political career, which was not very big, but it was still there, thriving. And also she says that Barack Obama did not marry someone who old enough to be his mom, in my own words, allegedly. Well, when she talks about this, she talks now about the creepy love story, which was sold by who? The French press. Because naturally, the alleged love story was romanticized too much by the French press. It would not have been easy to understand how the French press would have really sat down and savored such a story, alleged love story of a 14 or 15-year-old boy with a 39-year-old woman who is in her middle age, 3 kids, one of them the age of the child, another one older. And he was in class and the French teacher just saw her, was like, "Oh, oui, oui, c'est lui que je veux, il est mignon." And went after him. That was very horrifying. But how did the French press do it? They used a lot of tactics. And you know what? They had people that were perfect for this, according to Candace. Like I've said, everything is according to how she said it. I will drop in a few things here and there. But when I say something that is my opinion, I'll say my opinion. According to Candace, okay? So she talks about the intense media propaganda that was used to sow this kind of love story. And this is how it happened. On the 14th of April 2016, the love story of the Macrons was plastered all over this particular French press called Paris Match, a magazine. And this particular magazine, according to Candace, has really published so many stories over the years, selling this love story to everyone, okay? Anyone who is willing to hear, they were selling it. And it, you know, the words, damn, these people were crazy. I don't know how they were doing this. Now, Candace shows a video of Emmanuel Macron at 14 when he performed in the play where Brigitte saw him and said, "Yeah, oui, c'est lui que je veux." Yeah. I swear when I look at that video, I'm like, that is a baby. How do you, a woman 39, looks at a child like that? It's like, wow, oui, oui. That is a different level of creepiness. Anyway, the people they surround themselves with, allegedly, makes sense somehow. So this magazine sold this love story, and then you look at it and you see how Brigitte Macron had Emmanuel Macron join her theater club after watching Emmanuel Macron perform in that school play. Then this particular Paris Match went on to publish up to 13 covers. They dedicated 13 covers to Brigitte and selling Brigitte and Macron's love story, as well as over 60 newspapers dedicated the front cover to Brigitte Macron for the next 26 months. And this saturation of media is just to make sure that the more they sell the story, the more people would look at it as believable. And Candace coins in a term which she calls psychological strategy of over-information. Well, can we also say that Candace is using the psychological strategy of over-information in selling the story of the Macrons too? Well, it's possible. But then there are facts here. There are issues here that are extremely disturbing, to say the least. Okay? The media, at the time when they were selling this alleged love story, they mentioned then that the child is 17 and Brigitte is 36, which regardless of, even if they said the child is 18 and Brigitte is 35 or 30, creepy. Okay. And then Candace goes on to give the educational history of Brigitte from the time how she went to school, the Catholic education, Catholic background, her first marriage, and her kids. I will share this screenshot. You see everything about the marriage, the kids, which years they were born. Well, she goes on to talk about about Brigitte Macron's background from the time her education. Okay, April 13, 1953, Brigitte Trogneux is born in Amiens, the youngest daughter of a family of confectionaires who prospered in northern France. And then in 1974, after a strict Catholic education with the Sacred Heart Sisters, she marries at the age of 21 to a man named André Louis Ouzier, a bank executive. In 1975, Brigitte Ouzier gives birth to Sebastien. 1977, Brigitte Ouzier gives birth to Laurence. And 1977 is around the time Macron is also born, okay? So pay attention. One of Brigitte's children is actually older than Macron. Then 1982, following in her husband's footsteps, she begins her career in life as a press officer at the North Pas de Calais Chambre de Commerce. And in 1984, Brigitte Ouzier gives birth to Tiffany, the third child. 1980s, Brigitte Ouzier switches to teaching, first in Strasbourg as a literature teacher at the Lucie Berger Protestant College. Then in 1991, Brigitte Ouzier is teaching in La Provence, the Jesuit school, back in her native Amiens. It is here that she falls head over heels in love with the brilliant student Emmanuel Macron. Blood of Jesus. There is a special place in hell for people who play with people's kids, okay? I don't care what you say. There is a special place for Brigitte. You saw someone's 16-year-old child and then you went for it. Well, you know that in order to sell a story such as this, definitely a couple of people, imagine magazines are made up of intellectuals, people who've gone to school, okay? Magazines are owned by intellectuals. The people are intellectuals. So it would have taken a certain level of professionalism to sell the story. In order to sell the story to the French press, they contracted the expertise of a lady called Michel Marchand. Michel Marchand is who they call a pope of the celebrity press, the press bulldozer, because she is the bulldozer who will push your image out there the way she wants to, if she is dedicated to you. Now, Michel Marchand is also called Mimi. So for the rest of this, when I say Mimi, no, I'm referring to Michel Marchand. Michel Marchand flooded the press with blushed up pictures and images of the Macrons through Best Image. Best Image is her media company. And please pay attention to this company because you will hear a reoccurring theme of the name of this company coming up again. So pay attention. Now, the intermediary between Mimi, who was brushing up the image on the alleged love story of the Macrons, to the media using her company Best Image, and Brigitte Macron, is a billionaire called Xavier Neal. Now, I know the name might ring a bell because he is a billionaire and he is the owner of NJJ, the NJJ groups, okay? And also, Xavier Neal is the son-in-law of Bernard Arnault. Bernard Arnault is who? The CEO of LVMH. Now, you know who this is. Bernard Arnault, everybody know who this is. This man is the person who overtook Elon Musk to become the richest man in the world. Okay. He owns Louis Vuitton, all of the big, you know, all of those things. Everybody knows who Bernard Arnault. Arnault is, no need for me belaboring the point. Now, get this part, okay? 2 of Bernard's kids were taught by Brigitte Macron. This billionaire, who is the richest man in the world, his son-in-law is a go-between between Mimi and Brigitte Macron. Mimi, the one selling the beautiful images of their alleged romance to the press. And Bernard, the billionaire who is now the richest man in the world, 2 of his kids were taught by who? Brigitte Macron. They became such a close, they developed such a close friendship, such that one of Bernard Arnault's daughters, the oldest daughter, named Delphine, became close with Brigitte. She became so close with Brigitte that she was now the one dressing up Brigitte. And how was she doing it? Because, of course, she's a billionaire's daughter. She's not about to be moving around dressing up Brigitte like some celebrity stylists. No, they were doing it through someone. And who is that person? That person is the artistic director of Louis Vuitton called Nicolas Keshke. So Daphne's dad, the billionaire, richest man in the world, whose 2 kids were educated by Brigitte or taught in school by Brigitte, Daphne became close with Brigitte, so close that she decides to dress up Brigitte, and then she does it through her artistic director, who is Nicolas Keshke. And now, Nicolas Keshke is an interesting character because he is the main promoter of transgenderism in France. So he's so big on it that what he has done mostly is launching the careers of transgender individuals. Okay? Now, let's pack that one aside. This is all according to, this is what Candace is giving us. This is the meat and bones of what she's giving us, okay? Now, let's pack that aside. Now, let's go into Xavier and Mimi. Xavier, the son-in-law of Bernard, and Mimi, they met through a mutual lawyer. And how did they meet? Mimi has had a checkered past. So has Xavier. Xavier has had a strange past where he had an online platform where he was doing few side sexual things. And then he was now one time arraigned for aggravated pimping and prostitutions, and the charges were later on dismissed. And then Mimi had a lot of suspended sentences. And during those suspended sentences, Xavier, the son-in-law of Bernard, the richest man in the world, will constantly give Mimi money first to launch her media company, Best Images. What is Best Images? Best Images is the company that is providing most of the images that are out there, polishing the image of Brigitte and Macron, as well as even our growing up pictures. The older pictures of her are mostly provided by Mimi's company called Best Images. Who is the main sponsor of Best Images? It is Xavier, who has given her money to keep her afloat over and over again, despite all her problems with the law, suspended sentences with boyfriends that are constantly putting her in trouble. Let's look at another angle of this, okay? The Macrons suddenly started pulling away from Mimi after something happened. What happened? Because Mimi is their image polisher, okay? She sometimes steps by the White House, by the Elysee Palace, and she takes pictures in Macron's office. Like she's like, gang, we the people, we run the show. C'est nous qui sont là, c'est nous qui gère tout. And then suddenly the Macrons started pulling away from her. Why? Let me explain to you. You see how Mimi and Brigitte Macron are good friends until Mimi is working on her image. Brigitte Macron and one other billionaire called Mark are also good friends. And this is the problem. Mark has a problem. Mark has a son. and that son is a problem. Mark and Brigitte Macron attended a show. The title of that show is Star Mania. This Star Mania was produced by who? Thomas Jolly. Thomas Jolly is the one who finally did what? Orchestrated the opening ceremony or even the closing ceremony of the Paris Olympics, which is now deemed the most satanic opening of the Olympics. So it is during the time when Brigitte Macron and Mark attended Star Mania that they found what Thomas Jolly was able to do, and Brigitte handpicked Thomas Jolly and said, you know what, I want you to choreograph the Olympics. And then he went ahead and said, you know what, let's just mimic the Last Supper. Now, I was talking about how Brigitte is linked to another problem and why she started pulling away from her image polisher, Mimi. Mark's son had a problem. And what is that problem? Child. That guy cannot stop looking at images of children being forced on, people doing bad things to children. He cannot stop it. He has had more than one sentences. That is how bad his situation is. So, sometime just after they are finished having relationship, Mimi is posting from the Élysée Palace like, hey, nous sommes là, c'est nous qui gère toutes les choses ici. Bim. That very son again, the mother of his kids, who has 3 and 4 year olds, call the police and say, hello, please, I need help. I have found images of this man on his computer. I found images of kids on this man's computer in the house, and he has many pictures of kids being. Now the police shows up and collects that laptop. Do you know how many images they saw? 4,000 images of children being actually assaulted on that laptop. So they gave him another word, a very minor 8-month suspended sentence. So as a result of that, Mimi had to work overtime to make sure that Mark's son's name and the scandal stays out of the media. Because of Mimi working overtime and people looking at it like, wow, how could Mimi do this? And people know Mimi is linked to the Élysée Palace in terms, the Macrons. People started looking at them funny. So the Macrons said, you know what, this is too hot a pot for us right now, especially given that me, Brigitte, I married a child I saw when she was playing 14-year-old, playing or 15-year-old, and I looked at him and said, c'est lui que je veux, il est mignon. I think this time let us back off before people start pointing at my fingers at my own behavior. So they decided to pull away from Mimi, say, no, you know, this pot is too hot for us to be around here right now. When this happened, what happened? Mimi was pissed. Mimi was angry. A book was published which mentioned the fact that, or made allegations or insinuations that Mimi is no longer welcome in the Élysée Palace. She is now like shielded away from the Macron. She's now persona non grata. She's person non grata. Nobody wants her there. You know what? Mimi got upset after hearing that rubbish. She went and dropped a bombshell. She said, you know what? If you guys think you want to talk about me, I have things to say too. Mimi went and dropped a bombshell. What is the bombshell? Mimi dropped a cover of something talking about Brigitte being in a hospital doing plastic surgery. And then during that plastic surgery thing, they did not say the name of the doctor specifically, but they just mentioned a quote which the plastic surgeon is the only one in France who has said it. And that particular plastic surgeon is known for feminization surgeries. So what happens? Everybody was able to pinpoint that the plastic surgeon they are talking about is Dr. Patrick Bouye. And this is the thing. When Candace said this part, I said, well, Candace, we cannot be sure, you know. You know that sometimes you can say things and you go and say it off. Let me look. So I went to Google and I said, French feminization surgeon. That's all I typed. I did not add more. And Google came back and said, some French surgeons who perform feminization surgeries include Dr. Are Azolus. Number 2 on the list is exactly that, Dr. Patrick Bowie. I was like, okay, that's right. It means that everybody knew who they were talking about. They knew it. So when they dropped that bombshell, it shows that Brigitte saw something arrive in her anger. Like people are saying that this plastic surgeon who is only doing feminization surgeries to make people who are changing their bodies from this to that is now the one who works on me. Means that they want to insinuate that me too, I am doing this thing, je change quelque chose, je veux devenir une petite femme, donc il faut que je naisse ça une fois. So Brigitte was very angry. Brigitte came out, condemned it, and said, no, this is rubbish. The press is bullying me. Brigitte was angry. She went on a rampage, called out the press. So this is the thing that made Xavier Poussard, the journalist, to say, but wait, excuse me, is there something I'm confused here? What is going on? Because we have had other people talk about the French president insinuating things about her doing surgeries. She has never gotten angry. Why is it this particular person, Mimi, saying it that has made her this angry? Why? He went into digging, and then that's when they saw that there were so many skeletons in Brigitte Macron's closet, and that's when Xavier Poussard went into investigation and produced the 6-part series Candace Owens is now using for this investigation, which I am now using to give you this summary. I hope it is understood. If there is any part you did not understand, let me know. I can explain again. So, you see now that the story of the Macrons and Brigitte starts making no sense after people like Xavier Poussard and a couple of journalists starts looking. They start saying, but wait, these newspapers were singing songs of a pin-up girl, a very beautiful, very sexy teacher, every teacher. I mean, the way they were describing that lady, I fell in love with that lady they were describing. But the pictures, it was not giving what they were selling. The pictures was giving something else. What they were selling was giving Marilyn Monroe. When I heard everything they said, I was like, wow, that means definitely Brigitte Macron must have been Marilyn Monroe in those days. So let's wait for Marilyn Monroe. Boom, the pictures I saw were not making sense. So people in France started seeing that there were holes in the story of how Brigitte and Macron met. First of all, their relationship is not giving. It's rather taking away from mental health. It's not giving peace. It's giving damage. It's not giving healthy. It's giving pedophilia. It's not giving love. It's giving grooming. And people came together and said, non, ça ce n'est pas normal. Et ils ont commencé à regarder tout ça. Ils disent, mais est-ce que la dame, si elle n'est pas jolie, elle n'est pas comme, elle n'est pas pin-up girl, elle n'est pas très belle, elle ne porte pas les mini-skirts, elle ne porte pas les mini-jupes. On nous dit qu'elle porte les mini-jupes. Où sont les mini-jupes? On voit seulement les grandes jaquettes. Où est le mini-jupe? Où sont les petits skirts? Avec le teacher sexy. Où est le teacher sexy? Elle est partie où? Because tous les photos qu'on voit, ça ne fait pas de sens. I was looking for that person. I was looking. Where is she? And I wanted to ask, so Brigitte Macron was so beautiful, so sexy. Students were drooling over her. And then she never had so many pictures of herself in her teenage years to the times she was 20, to the time she never had those kind of pictures of her sexy self. Her life just keep from childhood, boom, into one picture when she got married, and then boom again to when she became teacher in Amiens. Anyway, after this, she goes into the letter the French president and his wife, through their lawyer, sent to her, the second letter, and she read it, explaining all the discrepancies of what they are pinning. They are hanging on to her, making errors of certain things, and they are also not looking at the questions she asked them. They are not answering her the question out front, like, were you born a woman, to say yes or no. They are just going and looking for other things. So she goes into that, and I would like us to skip that part. But if you want me to cover that, I don't mind covering it. I've gone through the letters. It's quite interesting. It's very, very interesting. Let's go to the next part, episode 2, An Inaccessible Pass. This one was dropped on February 5th, 2025. People are saying that she's transphobic in France, and then she asked that how can she be transphobic if Brigitte Macron is not a trans person? It makes sense there. That one, no, she got them there. So she starts this off with the fact that the French press was alluding to false identities when she has not even mentioned anything about it. So she asked, is there something about the identities that they should dig into? So well, she did that and she got into it, Okay. Well, she reminded them of the fact of the Brigitte Macron's image and seducing of Brigitte Macron's image of seducing a little boy, and as if Macron lived a dream of all the teenage boys and girls in school, because there was this constant polishing of Brigitte's image in the press, of course fostered by Mimi. If you remember who I mentioned earlier, Mimi, constantly fostering the idea of this is such a romantic story and all of that. And the aspects of how they were describing Brigitte is not something I can say. The only person who can say it best is Candy. Candy reads it perfectly. I cannot top that, so hear it for yourself.
Brigitte's class can't believe that the French teacher is celebrating her 40th birthday today. She looks so young in her short skirts and casual manner. To capture the attention of the most dissipated, the teacher has another, less academic asset, her legs showcased in tiny skirts. Brigitte didn't wait to become the first lady to take great care of her appearance. Quote, she was a pleasure to look at, not just listen to, always with perfect hairdressing, with makeup and perfumed, one student recalls. The boys are seduced. The girls take her as a role model. All the high school students were in love with her, says Frédéric from Emmanuel's class. And from her very vocal daughter, Tifon, the only child that seems to really defend Brigitte Macron, she included this, quote, when I was a child, I was even jealous of all the students who wrote to her or called her at home. Then there is another teacher who spoke and went a little bit further. They said, quote, Brigitte arrived at La Providence wearing mini tailleuse. That's like a mini skirt and with a jacket, right? A sports coat. Beautiful, a pinup.
Well, after hearing that and seeing those images, do you see the sexy lady? Well, as it goes, in 2018, someone called Maya Brun, a celebrity, the head of a celebrity magazine, Closer, where one of the magazines that have been glossing her images, published an official biography of Brigitte Macron, and the autobiography is titled La Franchise, or A Free Woman. Then, the funny thing about this autobiography that many people found was that it was not very exhaustive. It did not cover a lot. It covered just mostly what was already out there. Many people thought, oh, this looks like a compilation of what is out there. But they said, okay, fine. It's okay. If it's just a compilation of what is out there, it's fine. At least we will now have more pictures of this compilation. Given it's it's a biography authorized, an official one, we will have more pictures. But lo and behold, there were not many pictures. Still, we still had no pictures of her as within her middle ages, just a little child image, and then to when she is a teacher in Amiens. Also, there were it felt like some part of the first 40 years of her life were left out of that autobiography, which was very troubling for many people in France. They were confused about it. Then in June 2018, that same year, Virginia Linhart, who is like this documentary genius who has been very good at producing documentaries for like World War One, important events, she decided to do a documentary using the book La Franchise of Brigitte Macron's official biography as the main source of information to do this documentary. Lo and behold, when the documentary showed up, a lot of people were a little confused when it was released because it was released on the government French Channel 3, which is an official government channel, but most of it had only photos of her from her teaching days, which were very different from what the description of her were, definitely. So it was very confusing, and many people were asking that, but this lady, Virginia Linhart, is very reputed for creating good documentaries. If she wants to create a documentary like this, wouldn't she at least put in an effort to make sure that she has a documentary that at least speaks to the facts of who Brigitte was? Well, she did. She did her best, and she actually gave a statement after the documentary came out and people were complaining about how scanty it was with images and pictures, videos, nothing. It was very scanty. It was just mostly of Brigitte from her teaching days. She came out and said, it's difficult to investigate Brigitte Macron, much more than I imagined, on the substance, on the form, on everything. As soon as I started making contacts, I was summoned by Pierre-Olivier Coster and Tristan Bromet, that is Brigitte's chief of staff. It was almost like a police interrogation. What do I want to show? How will I be interviewing? I made a list of people I wanted to meet, but could not apply that list. The interviewees, apart from her former students, all had the authorization of the Elysee Palace. And you know what? They were very careful about what they said. There is a very thick wall of silence. The level of control and checking is well and quite astonishing. The documentary is a 90-minute, very personal portrait. For it, I needed photographs of young Brigitte Macron, small children, that would show an itinerary, not those approved by Best Image Agency. What won't be released is anything to do with her former life. It's a total blackout. That's what Virginia Linhart had to say, which means that this lady tried her best. It was not her fault that we had just like 23 years of her life disappearing from a documentary. She did her best to give us. And she now mentioned again Best Image Agency. You remember Mimi? Yeah, Mimi? Very good. I'm glad you're keeping up. Keep up, okay? There is a lot to go, so I need you to pick the pace up. You see now that there is a lot going on that we cannot substantiate as of now. The pictures given were those from Mimi's agency, and then there were two images that were very, very controversial. One, there was the image of Brigitte, according to the Best Image Agency as it was given, that was Brigitte's communion picture, something like that. It's a black and white picture. The controversy here is that most people saw that this girl in the picture rather looked a little more like Brigitte Macron's daughter and not Brigitte. Another problem, there were two pictures that caused problems. The second picture that was very controversial is a family picture. This family picture had everybody in Brigitte's family according to what they said, okay, right? Yes, but then the problem is that they were showing a girl in the lap of their mom to be Brigitte, but most people were looking at a boy at the corner to be maybe Brigitte. They said, no, that is Jean-Michel Trogneux. And then everybody asked, so where is Jean-Michel Trogneux now? Crickets. People, crickets. So in this particular episode, Candace made some corrections to herself, which she said she had made an error before, thinking that the image was coralized. My English is gone. That the image was colorized. Damn. I swear I've spoken about so many bad things and my mouth is confused. The image was coralized. You understand what I mean? But then she says the image was not. She made that correction. The second mistake she made was asking Xavier Poussard during an interview with him if the image was probably Brigitte Macron, but the original Brigitte Macron had died. Then this one Brigitte Macron has taken her identity, and then she said no. She has also come to ask the understanding that no, the original Brigitte Macron did not die. Okay, I hope we've got up. Let's go on. Now, the question now was, where is Jean-Michel Trogneux? Let's put a pin on that, and please, we will come back to it because that is a very important person. That family member of Brigitte Macron, very important because he cannot be found. But there is a very peculiar family member of his that is now very important in this story. Stay tuned. Now, let's dive into Emmanuel Macron. Emmanuel Macron grew up in a small town in Amiens to parents Jean-Michel Macron and Francois Nourg. Now, Emmanuel's biography seems to be very scanty as well. It leaves very little to anybody's knowledge because from what Xavier Poussard, who is carrying out, was releasing a book then, said, finding information about Macron was also as difficult as the same thing Virginie Linhart said about finding information about Brigitte Macron. Both of them very mysterious couple, linked up with very mysterious people. Brigitte Macron's first husband, André Louis Hosier, has been described as the French Republic's best kept secret. Nobody knows where he is. At some point, they even brought up a picture and said, oh, that is Brigitte Macron's first husband, who another student who was in Amiens, who went to school with Macron and who was in the school when Brigitte Macron was teaching. They came out and said, no, that's not Brigitte Macron's husband. That is a teacher in this school. That is not he. So that one died. Case closed. So Brigitte Macron's husband is the best kept Republic secret. Nobody knows who he is. So when they dive into Emmanuel's life, they discover that it's the same damn thing. The man is a mystery. Now, a couple of people have tried going into his background. They couldn't find much. Okay. Then we have now an autobiographer who went into looking at his life. In looking at his life, he couldn't find much. That is exactly what Xavier Poussard is saying. So Xavier Poussard says that I had a hard time finding Emmanuel's friends. He never talked about his family. This is a short summary of what is used to describe how Emmanuel's family findings was difficult, him as a person. In Revolution, Emmanuel devotes 5 pages to his maternal grandmother, only 1 to his parents, and 2 lines to his brother Laurent and his sister Estelle. Nor is there any mention of his half-brother Gabriel, born in 2005 from his father's second marriage, and even less of his father's companion, Helene. Conversely, he scrupulously mentions the first names of Brigitte's 3 children and their spouses, as well as those of her 7 grandchildren. She has since had an 8th one. On the day of the investigator, the Osiers were the only ones to tread the red carpet leading to the Palace of the Élysée. Tiffany and Lorraine, blonde, slim, and elegant, and their brother Sebastian, all accompanied by their spouses and children. The estrangement is reciprocal. In 2014, a colleague of his brother Laurent at the hospital asked him if the Macron working with François Hollande at the Élysée Palace was a close relative. He said, no, he's a vague cousin. Everyone's bugging me about this guy. Now, this is a direct quote from Xavier Poussard, someone who also tried writing an autobiography about Emmanuel Macron. Finding pictures of Emmanuel Macron was also very difficult. And then this is what happened. Emmanuel Macron had an official autobiography done and titled Revolution. And when this autobiography was done, there were very scarce a few pictures of him. There were just like 3 pictures of him. And the first one is when he was 10 years old. And it was really rare to find pictures of him, his background, or anything about him from Amiens and all of that. It was very difficult. And then this strange thing of Emmanuel is a journalist who is gay. And the reason we are saying this, according to what Candace said, is that the reason she specified the fact that this guy is gay is because many people who want to criticize those who look into this story say they are anti-LGBT and all of that. She says this one is gay, which means he is not anti-LGBT and all of that. He went to investigate Emmanuel Macron's background and he wasn't finding much information. So when he spoke with the mayor of Amiens, the mayor said Macron is not from Amiens, he is from Touquet, which was very strange to him. Then he also mentioned the fact that Emmanuel Macron skipped the commemoration of the city of Amiens, a commemoration where the British Queen, the grandson, King Charles, now King Charles, or is still Prince. His wife will be Queen, he'll be King, I'm sure. Charles was there. Many important personnel were there, but he was not there. And despite the fact that his own city was one of the important cities in this particular event, the guy did not show up. Okay, let's say he has clashes of a lot of things. But then this is something Candace also brings up, that there was a time when a couple of journalists were following the French president around for some of his situations with him moving around. He made a statement which was very intriguing. He said his great-great-grandmother wanted his grandmother just to go to the capital city and learn French, because the great-grandmother could only speak Pyrenean. And think about that. Now he's the president of France. Then that particular journalist was like, he thought about it and he searched and he found that there is no language known as Pyrenean. So it was very strange to him that Macron would make up a strange language to insinuate it, which means they are alleging that he is making up the stories because he doesn't have a real story of his own. Well, in pure fairness, I searched online trying to find out if there is a language known as Pyrenean. It seems so, yes. There is a language. They said no, there is no widely recognized or major language called Pyrenean or Pyrenean. However, there is a Pyrenean dialect of Gascon, a variety of the Occitan language spoken in the Pyrenees region of Spain and France. And this region is also the same region where Macron's great-grandmother is supposed to be from. So I think that in this part, maybe yes, the language is not an officially known language. It's not an official, but it is a dialect. So in that aspect, I can understand. Also on the aspect that he was not friends with all of his 48 classmates, I don't see that as a problem. 48 is a very small sample size for someone to choose friends from. Probably amongst those 48, he didn't see one that he could make friends with. Some people can't even choose a friend out of a sample size of 10,000 people. So on that aspect, it's very not a lot of proof of anything. Also the aspect that there are no pictures of him before 10, it's normal. Before 10 years, it makes sense that he might not have pictures. Maybe his parents were not that attentive to having him pictures. Maybe something happened to pictures of him when he was small. And I don't know. That is something we can, I don't know. Not many people can produce pictures of themselves. especially in those days when they were very young. Today, children grow up with pictures in their cameras in their faces. Yes, I understand that in the 80s and 90s, 70s, 80s and 90s, people took pictures. Yes, I know my grandmother has very many pictures of herself in the olden days. But still, it's not everyone who got the luxury of having all their pictures in the young ages available. At least we have pictures of Macron from 10 and pictures of him from teenager going up, which is, it's okay. That's me just playing devil's advocate here, right? Someone just understand that. That's me trying to just say, I don't see that as a huge reason. And also the fact that his cousin said, no, people keep asking me about a guy. Yeah, probably he's tired of people talking about his brother constantly, and he does that. I know celebrities who will refuse themselves in public just because they don't want to deal with the fact that they are going to be allowed all of that applaud and all of that in public. So they'll say, no, I'm not the one. So in that aspect, I can play devil's advocate there. But when it comes to Brigitte, too many question marks. My brain is struggling. My brain is struggling. Now, to Jean-Michel Trogneux, that's an important question. You remember I said it? Yeah? Good. You remember I said the family portrait of Brigitte Macron had a controversy. There was a brother there who Brigitte Macron said that is his brother. And she is supposed to be the last child of the family. In that picture, she is 1 year old. And then the brother on the side is older than her. But many people saw the brother to look more like Brigitte. So people started coming up with a theory that probably, maybe, And then Candace teases again the idea of a picture of Jean-Michel Trogneux's son. I kid you not. Jean-Michel Trogneux's son is a good-looking replica of Emmanuel Macron. But this is the part that gets confusing. Emmanuel Macron is not related to Brigitte. The boy who looks like Emmanuel Macron, called Jean-Jacques, is the nephew of Brigitte, who is Emmanuel Macron's wife. So how is it that Emmanuel Macron's wife's cousin, that is her brother's son, looks so much like Emmanuel Macron? And then Candace drops, giving her incestuous something there. And she tells us in the next episode, we are going to look into his wife's brother's kid, Jean-Jacques. She teases about looking into Emmanuel Macron's parents, what they were doing, how was it going? Ladies and gentlemen, when I tell you this series has gotten us out in these streets confused, I mean it. We are all confused. There is even a documentary which was done for Brigitte Macron called Un roman français. This documentary was done, but still it was not enough. People were complaining. What do you mean? Everything was confusing. Please, ladies and gentlemen, I don't even want to go into the aspect of Brigitte Macron, sexy skirts. You know what? Let's go into episode 3. This is too much. Episode 3, titled One Coincidence is Too Many. Look, before we go into episode 3, there is something I skipped out on, which was also important in the previous episode, where Emmanuel Macron was with someone and they asked him about his sister, Élysée, or is it Estelle? And rather than answering, he turned and looked at his wife, asking, hoping for her to tell him whether to answer or not, or what to say. So that was another thing. Okay. So that was another thing. Now, let's go into these coincidences that are one too many for the Macrons and their mysterious ways. As we have already established, Macron was extremely close with his grandmother, who he fondly calls Minette. He was not very close with his parents, according to the way his biography usually sounds. Neither was he as close to his siblings. He has stated that he learned to read, he learned to walk, he learned a lot of things while at his grandmother's house or his grandparents' house. He spent a lot of time there, and he spent all of that time with his grandmother, so much that some journalists, some people have even speculated that probably his grandmother might have adopted him. So that is one of the reasons why he is so fond of her. He said he learned to read with his grandmother, and that sounds so beautiful because that is something that it is adorable. And then you go now to look at the fact that he has also stated that he grew up surrounded by books. Then we start to look, what kind of books are these? Lo and behold, family members of this investigation, one of those books is by André Guy. So what we are essentially saying here is that the book we were complaining about, which Macron had behind his presidential portrait, and we're already saying, screaming, man, that's too much. He's an adult then. He's already a mature man then, but we were still like, gross, sir, what? Lo and behold, his grandmother shared her love for those books with him. André Guy's books. If you've forgotten, André Guy is the guy who is a pederast, like we explained before, the guy who likes small boys. He does things to small boys. He traveled around Morocco doing things to small boys. That is André Guy. Another book that his grandmother shared with this young man is a book by Jean-Michel Trogneux. The book is titled The El King. The El King book, honestly, for the mental health of everyone involved in this series, I will spare you what is going on there. But if you really think you are too pugnosy, I link all the episodes below. This is in episode 3. You can go and listen to how everything about it. If you want to torment yourself, please go torment yourself by yourself and hear how this author is describing what they want to do to little children, and they claim that the little children are already mature beyond their ages, they are wise beyond their ages. Gross. Well, in this episode, Candace now links something like this to what she is looking at as the aspect of grooming a child to think that they are already mature enough to handle an adult. For example, what Madame Brigitte did with Macron when she saw the little boy and said, oui, il est mignon, je veux lui. That kind of thing. And that is why we are screaming in our brains. Why will a grandmother introduce her little boy to books such as this? Well, I am sorry. It's not all of us who comes from families that introduce us to things like that. So some of us are extremely shocked right here. Give me the moment to take in all the shock I'm feeling. Whew. Minette died, according to what Candace now said, Minette died in April 13. So she was not exactly sure of the date, but I was able to ascertain that Minette died in 2013 at the age of 96. The date Minette dies, Candace makes a round circle around it. About that is the same date Brigitte Macron was born, and it's the same day the MK Ultra program was born. Then she talks about the MK Ultra program and how she believes that it's still alive and well because she doesn't trust the fact that that program was having killed because it was a program that was used to manipulate people and things like that. She goes on a whole discussion of it. Let us now look at Mommy and Daddy Macron, Macron's parents. Candace says Emmanuel Macron's alleged parents. That's so funny. I don't know why she calls them alleged parents. Yes. Candace. So she says that anyway, according to what she explains now, Daddy Macron, Jean-Michel Macron, is a psychiatrist, while Mommy Macron, Françoise Noc Macron, is a pediatrician. Mom Macron happened to have helped one person who is a transgender person, helping him, who was born a boy to become a girl. Faced with the wall of Emmanuel Macron's childhood, we decided to screen in meticulously with a question in mind: why did the family refuse to respond to journalists' questions? Why did they need Brigitte's approval? A hearing at the French National Assembly caught our attention, that of Sylvain Teliford, president of the Institute of Intersexuality and Hermaphrodism Association of Europe. Born in Beauvais in 1956 under the name Sylvain Telefort, changed to Sylvain by a court ruling in Paris on May 15, 2007. He incidentally revealed to the French National Assembly that the person who helped him in making all of these wonderful changes was someone called no other but Emmanuel Macron's mom. Then, in looking further to see if this was just a one-time thing of her helping one person become trans or things like that, they realized that no, she is actually very serious in the business. Waivers granted by the National Federal Advisors Dr. Francois Macron Nog, who must be said is the mother of the current president. She has done a tremendous amount of work following all kinds of generations of people like me, granting subsidies to those that have no access to specialists. We take our time, so it shows that I'll post a screenshot that you can read everything. It shows that she was not only doing this as a one-time thing, but it's a business or something she has been involved in for a long time, and she is deeply involved in it. This particular author, C.V. Bome, who decided, and she has been really deep into looking into Brigitte Macron's biography because she's interested in the lady, trying to know what's going on with her. So she decided to look some more to write another book. Well, the book is quite interesting. The book is titled Il venant d'avoir 17 ans. That is, he just turned 17. Well, according to what Candace says, at the end of this book, this woman said no, he was turning 15. So that is another ball of can of worms. This woman, Xavier Poussard, was trying to write a full biography again. Dig more into Macron's wife, like everybody is trying to do, okay? So she kept coming across mistakes that Brigitte Macron was making when it comes to her age. She would try to understand it, but it was not making sense, you see? Then she noticed that there were a lot of discrepancies when it comes especially to Brigitte Macron's first husband as well. It was very difficult to find anything on him, like a wedding photo. They finally found, like finding a wedding photo, pictures of him, anything about his work. It was so difficult. It felt like he just disappeared after everything. But then you remember the journalist Isabella Ferreira, who was also working on the discrepancies around Brigitte Macron, who was sued before regarding those discrepancies. Well, she had insinuated that the picture, because there was a wedding photo of Brigitte Macron that finally surfaced of a wedding on June 22nd, 1974. And in that wedding, the best man was Jean-Michel Trogneux. So, which insinuates that Brigitte Macron was very close to her brother. And then the brother who has suddenly also disappeared. But then that journalist looked at that photo Isabella said she thinks that the person there is not the husband of Brigitte as they are claiming, but that the person they're getting married is another cousin of Brigitte who is known as Louise Andre. Now, the Elysee Palace got angry over this assertion, and so they contacted Louise Andre, the cousin Louise Andre, and told him, you know what, we want you to sue Isabella Ferreira for this thing she said, sue her and we will support you in this lawsuit. Then Louise Andre went ahead, filed the lawsuit, and then went back to the Elysee Palace, hoping for the backup. While doing this thing, some other journalists, Emmanuel Alisson, who also wrote a book trying to debunk the fact that, or trying to debunk the insinuations that Brigitte Macron, that Louise Andre, the misidentified cousin, is not the one in the wedding photo, because she wanted to write a book to disprove that, because she was looking at it like, this is bizarre, c'est bizarre. Pourquoi vous dites que c'est André là-bas? So she was involved in this because she was writing a book to support Brigitte Macron, to debunk that the person in the wedding photo of 1974 is not Brigitte, is not André Louis, but it is Brigitte Macron. It is Brigitte Macron's first husband. But then this journalist was involved now, helping to see how she can follow this up. So she finally went to Louis Andre. Louis Andre, the guy who has filed the lawsuit, waiting for Elysee Palace to support him. Well, Brigitte Macron did not support Louis Andre. Brigitte Macron left Louis Andre to dry and told Louis Andre that, we are thinking that tu vas faire ton lawsuit et on va faire notre lawsuit séparément. You do your lawsuit, I do my own lawsuit, we do it separately. And that is what happened. And Louis Andre was very angry. And mind you, Louis Andre will become a very important part of this story, because pay attention to his name. He will become a little snitch. He will be giving us a little information in future. So pay attention to him. Now, Emmanuel Alisson, who was trying to debunk the alleged misinformation of André Louis being the misidentified cousin in the wedding photo of 1974, she started trying to investigate more, but it was very difficult. She was trying to understand, where is the original father of these children? Where is Brigitte's husband? Well, lo and behold, while she's struggling in that investigation, Tiffane, Brigitte Macron's daughter, the only daughter who is trying to talk to her, to defend her in public, and the only daughter who participated in the documentary which was done before by the investigative journalist who covers World War I and World War II we discussed earlier. Yes, the only person who accepted to talk to that journalist during that documentary was Tiffane also. Now, when Emmanuel Alisson is online, struggling back and forth, struggling to get information on Tiffane's father, Brigitte Macron's first husband, Tiffane shows up online and says, you know what, guys, my daddy has died. My daddy has died. And then when she's giving that announcement, she makes two important mistakes. One, she makes a mistake of the date when the father was cremated, and she makes a mistake of the fact that the father was not cremated, that the father was not buried but cremated, because she say something like, my father died, I buried him this on this date. She makes a mistake on the date, which she says a date that is 4 days earlier. And then she also asserts that it was more of a burial. Meanwhile, it was a cremation. Now, how did we know? Because André Louis, the cousin who was left to hang and dry by Brigitte Macron when he was waiting for Brigitte Macron to come and support him in a lawsuit, he got angry. He called the journalist Emmanuel Alisson, who was struggling to find out about the husband, called her and said, look, I have a story to give you. Now, Emmanuel Alisson went and saw Louis Andre, and Louis Andre said, yeah, he died. I was sent an information on his burial, and it was a tight niche, close burial. And this is the flyer that was given to us at the burial. We entered the burial. It was a very short thing. One, Brigitte Macron did not even show up. to the Elysee Palace was so over the burial. They were all over it, trying to control everything about it. So it was so, c'était un genre. Tu sais, André était là, il donne tous les secrets. Je vous assure, c'était comme un petit column blocks. He gave the sponges, gave everything out to this Emmanuel Allison lady. So this Emmanuel Allison lady asked a few questions which were a little troublesome to her. She asked this guy, so you're telling me Brigitte Macron did not attend the burial or cremation or funeral last respect of the father of her 3 children, the man she was married for 30 days? Say yes, she did not show up. Say, you're telling me that Brigitte Macron and the Elysee Palace covered this entire situation? He said yes. And then she also looked at the picture that was used for the funeral and said, you're telling me this is the only picture that they could pick and use for this man to honor this man's last memory? The guy said something very interesting. He said, all the other pictures have been destroyed. Eh? Yeah, that's what the guy said. Louis said that they have been destroyed. So Louise Andre now talks to Allison about the funeral and gives her everything, even gives her the flyer, which she now says, oh, but it's surprising to her because Emmanuel Allison is not somebody who was going in with any secondary intention. She was going in to debunk the first journalist who was claiming that Andre Louis is a person in the 1974 picture. And then now she is met with so many questions than answers. She's met with too many loopholes than she liked. And that is where she is left. So she concluded this thing by just saying that, you know what, at the end of the day, this is very confusing. So that is where I leave it. Another journalist, Sophie Descartes, reported in a Paris March 2022 magazine that Andre Louis ended his days at a psychiatric clinic with a guard at his door, supervised by none other than another very controversial security. You know the security, Alexandra Vanilla. This guy was so controversial that he is the person in the middle of the Vanilla scandal. You know what I mean, right? Yeah, that guy. That's the guy. So you can see that this entire scenario is extremely confusing. So many coincidences. A grandmother who decides to give the grandson strange books to read. The mother is involved in a couple of transgendering things, very involved in it. The wife of the son of that particular mother is allegedly another transgender person. So you see that the entire situation is very confusing here. Now, this is me being a conspiracy theory. This is a lie. It's a conspiracy theory. It's just my brain working. What if when Jean-Michel Trogneux was when he decided he wanted to change from Jean-Michel Trogneux to Brigitte Trogneux, the person she spoke to help her was François Macron. François Macron helped her in those early days. Then later on, when she started heading around François Macron's son, François Macron, the only thing she could do was move the son to Paris because she could not really do much because it seems she and this particular woman had a certain history that she was not very sure how to handle. So she moved the son. Then the son came back, married her. The son came back and married her son and said, what will you do? You know what? Conspiracy theory land is very thick. Let's move on to the next episode, episode 4. Episode 4 is titled Jean-Michel Trogneux, and it happened on the 11th of February 2025. Coincidentally, it was also the birthday of original Jean-Michel Trogneux. So in this episode, Candace Owens reminded us of the Macrons family tree. They reminded us of Brigitte Macron's family tree as well. So just as a reminder, the Macron's family tree, as you can see in the picture I will insert here, is made up of the grandmother, Jeanne, that is who Emmanuel calls Minette. Then Minette had the baby Françoise No, who married Jean-Michel Macron. Then they have a son, Emmanuel Macron. So that is the family tree of Macron we are working with right now. Then she reminded us of the history of Emmanuel Macron's mom in relation to creating new identities for transgender individuals, implying that an individual who wishes to transgender, to become a different sex, can literally shed their old identity, become a whole new person, and you will not be able to find that person's old identity if you don't pay much attention to it. So that is who Macron's mom is actually. And all of this is another testament to how much she asserts that there is a lot of, how do I say, a lot of people surrounding Macron and his wife who could have actually helped her in doing what she's doing. For example, the plastic surgeon. Now we have someone who could have given her an easy identification change in the name of Macron's mom, and all of that is crazy. Then she also talks about Alessandra Banala. Remember the guard, the Alessandra Banala. It was a very famous or infamous case where we had the Banala affair, where Alessandra Banala, who was at that time the press secretary of the Élysée Palace. He wore police gear, went out in public, and was beating up protesters. And it became so public. It was a huge scandal. So huge, so much that the Macrons, despite their not wanting to let go of this guy, had to officially put out a statement that they are letting go of him from serving as chief of staff. Sorry, it's not the press secretary, sorry. From serving as chief of staff of the Élysée Palace. But then another scandal about Alexander Bernard still broke again. Alexander Bernard does not know how to go away quietly. He was still found in another scandal. But before this guy became not press secretary. Why do I keep calling him that? Before this guy became chief of staff of the Élysée Palace, well, who was he? How did he start? The guy came from nowhere, according to Candace, and at 23, he was accused and acquitted of assaulting a lady. And then at 25, I think, at 25, Emmanuel Macron got him a job, and he became so big in the Élysée Palace at 25. He became such a big part of the Macrons' presidency. So big, so much that the Macrons allowed him to move into the Élysée Palace. He actually had a living quarters there. And then the next thing we know, we had the scandal of the Banala scandal, after which, when he was allegedly let go by the Élysée Palace, lo and behold, in no time, it was discovered that he used his diplomatic passports to go to Africa and talk to some people, especially presidents. And one of those presidents he spoke to is the president of Chad, just on the top of Cameroon. Oh, how cute. Okay, so he went and spoke to that president, and the next day, before you opened your eyes, the president had to endure a case of, oh, the people are uprising, oh, people are complaining, and before you know it, things like that happen. Like I've said, anytime France passes around, something goes down. Always. I don't know why it's like that with them. Then, now, there are still also contracted, this particular Alexander Bernard guy still has another scandal where he was alleged to have contracted financial ties with members of the Russian mafia, allegedly. So this guy is really filled with a lot of smoke around him. You can't get a clear look of him because he's always filled with dirt. That's just the guy. Now, the chart of shady people who surround the Macrons. Here is this chart. This chart is crazy. The chart of these people include Brigitte Macron. It includes, the chart of these people includes Brigitte Macron's publicist Mimi, of course. It includes Nicolas. It includes Francois, that is Macron's mom. It includes Alexandra Bernal. It includes the billionaire and owner of everything, Bernard Arnault. So all of these people are really full of a lot of things around. Now, she now goes into who is Jean-Michel Trogneux. Who actually is this person? Because that is an entire situation. Then she brings up this particular journalist who wanted to write a story about Jean-Michel Trogneux, about a Brigitte Macron some time ago. And lo and behold, just as we always notice, there is usually a problem finding information about Brigitte Macron's past. Yeah. Very, very big problem. Always. There is always a problem. Now, we have this journalist, Gail Shakalo, who was writing this one, Tant qu'on est tous les deux. Tant qu'on est tous les deux. That is like when we're just two of us. Yeah, just two of us. And, well, as we know, it was not good information they could find. Then she leaves that there and she dives into another situation. She says there was this journalist, while doing all of this research, they now stumble onto something. They stumble onto an interview that was being given by a certain lady whose name, according to the name they were using for that interview, she was using the name Veronique. And then she was talking about she has changed she has just undergone surgeries to change herself from man to woman. And she doesn't feel like she has always been a man. She's always felt like a woman. And in that interview, according to what Candace says, they notice that her cadence, the tics, the vocal footprint felt a whole lot like Brigitte's vocal footprint. And then they used an AI voice analysis to analyze, is this voice that of Brigitte or not? And he said he gave it 100% Changut. It is Brigitte Macron's voice. And that AI software, according to what my dear sister Candace says, does not lie. It's not me. I am just reporting. Please don't shoot the messenger. Messenger just giving the message, okay? Don't want to hear anything. She goes into the timeline of Jean-Michel Trogneux. Again, the reason she's going into this timeline is so to ascertain that around the time this lady Veronique was doing this interview is around the time when Jean-Michel Trogneux was currently living with a particular lady he married in 1980. The lady was called Veronique Do, something Veronique Do. Okay, and that lady, and in the interview, the Veronique said, I am currently living with a woman, and around that time, the original Jean-Michel Trogneux was also married to a lady called Veronique. So Candace thinks that this time, what happens is that Jean-Michel Trogneux was living with this lady who he was married to and decided to use the friend's name or that lady's name during the interview. Just, when you go for an interview like that, you're trying to hide your identity, you look for a name that is very close to you or similar to you to use. And the name she decided to use was Veronique. And also, remember, during that time, when Jean-Michel Trogneux got married to Veronique, they had a son. Do you want to know who that son is? That son is Jean-Jacques. Jean-Jacques is the boy who looks so much, in fact, scarily like Emmanuel Macron. You see how the conspiracy is going around, right? The soup is so thick. It's unbelievable. Well, at this point, she goes on to tell us that she will have an interview with Xavier Poussard, who is going to give us a picture of Jean-Michel Trogneux when he was around 18, the last pictures of him before he disappeared off the face of the earth. And when you see that picture, you will die. And you know what? I was waiting. And you know what? Stay tuned, because I'm telling you, this tea, this is hot. It is piping hot. Okay? Now, she goes on to tell us again that the reason Xavier Poussard has not been sued by the Macrons and the other journalists and other people have been sued easily is because Xavier Poussard uses a certain software. That software is even given a changut by the World Economic Forum, saying that the software is top-notch in recognizing people. It's the same software that China uses. And she says that that software is the software that has been given Xavier Poussard sense. Is the software that has been making Xavier Poussard to have sense and smartness to know what to say, how to put his mouth and how not to put his mouth. And that is why he has not been sued. And then I asked myself, Candace, can you talk to Xavier Poussard, given he's your primary source of information, for him to be giving you that software so you don't also run into this problem we see in, like, can you use that software? But well, everybody to each his own, so that we can avoid this. You know what? Let's go to the 5th episode, because the 5th episode is even juicier. I cannot wait for us to finish. This is crazy. The episode 5 is titled Who Created Emmanuel Jean-Jacques Macron? Candace, I don't know where you're getting all these titles from. There is no other person who can make a title be so good like Candace. She knows how to make them. Even the CNN, BBC, all of them are boiling corn. She knows how to give a title. She knows. Episode 5, Who Created Jean-Jacques Macron? So she started this by saying that Alessandra Banala, you remember the Alessandra Banala guy? Yeah, that he followed her on IG. And you know what? Candace slid into his DM and he left her on red. Candace, that's your problem. Let's move on. She also tells us about Veronique, the woman who married Jean-Michel Trogneux. And then they had the baby Jean-Jacques, who looks like Macron. She reminds us of the thing the woman said, the Veronique, who was the transsexual woman who had the interview before. What she said she is living with a woman in the style of George Sand and Chopin. Allegedly, Macron likes to play music to Brigitte. That is like the music of these two people. And there are some things about that. Go to her channel, you hear all of it. Then she talks about the inconsistencies. Jesus, my English is gone. She talks about the inconsistencies that are between Jean-Michel Trogneux's marriage to Veronique, their timeline, and certain things. And we will get into those inconsistencies, especially when we will have Xavier Poussard interviewing Veronique, the former wife of Jean-Michel Trogneux. So pay attention to that. She talks about the union was announced, the union first between Veronique, who married Jean-Michel Trogneux. That union was announced, first of all, after the fact. That means they got married, and after some time, they dropped an advert like, yeah, they got married in the strictest privacy. And that reminded her of the burial of Brigitte's first husband, when the daughter Tiffany announced it and said the burial took place in the strictest privacy, and then mistakenly said it was a burial. Meanwhile, it was a cremation. Mistook the date, which was 4 days later than the day she gave. So that was another thing that took us to note somewhere in the corner of your brain. Also, she said Brigitte was the witness of the wedding between Veronique and Jean-Michel Trogneux. Now, as a result of that marriage, they had a son, Jean-Michel Trogneux, and Veronique had a son, Jean-Jacques Trogneux, of course, and they had a daughter, Valérie. They had a divorce around 1987 or finalized a divorce around that time, depending on when they started the procedures. Then Veronique remarries a man called Alan, who is a major insurer from Amiens. And Veronique classes up, like she becomes this high-earned woman. And then Xavier Poussard asked himself, what is the risk of asking this lady who has been married to Jean-Michel Trogneux, and Jean-Michel Trogneux is nowhere to be found? What's the risk? So he said, you know what, let me contact this lady. I'm sure from her I will get some clarity that will help me put this case to bed. All right. He contacts Veronique, the former wife of Jean-Michel Trogneux, and say, hey, I would like to speak to you regarding Jean-Michel Trogneux, your ex-husband, and things like that. And the surprising thing is, Veronique accepts to talk to him. Veronique is now married to a rich man. Remember that. Now Veronique, he contacts her via WhatsApp messages, and Veronique set up a day for them to have a conversation. During this conversation, Xavier Poussard asked Veronique, is Jean-Michel Trogneux currently Brigitte Macron? She said no. And she was talking a lot about a few things, like people are saying that she's a mother of the current president of France. No, she's not. Where is that? It's absurd. She insists that she is not there is nothing like that. And then she goes on to say something interesting. She says that she knew the father of Macron and a surgeon. Then she stops. And it seems someone was with her in the room, and then she stopped, suddenly realizing that she has said too much. So she talks to Xavier Poussard. Xavier Poussard asks her, so after you got married, after you divorced, where did you live? She says she went and lived with her mom. Xavier Poussard said, okay, can you just please send me some pictures between you and your ex-husband so that I can put this thing to bed? I will not publish them, but I just want to look them to confirm them and then know that, okay, my investigation has gone cold and I've finally gotten my answers. The woman told him, Veronique told Xavier Poussard that, look, Brigitte has told me to stay away from this. So he found that interesting, because why is it Brigitte telling her to stay away from it? Why not Jean-Michel Trogneux, her ex-husband, rather Brigitte? And why is it that Jean-Michel Trogneux seemed to be this ghost that she did not even mention during the time she spoke with him? And it just felt like a ghost that will not be mentioned. Then he said, okay, fine. I will go back and do more of my own investigation. She realized that, one, she lied about moving in with her mom after the divorce. She actually went and lived in an apartment in Amiens that was paid for or owned by none other than Jean-Michel Trogneux's father. God damn it. This pot is cooking, the soup is mixed, okay? Another thing that Xavier Poussard notices is that Veronique keeps removing her marriage to Jean-Michel Trogneux from some official documents, including her tax documents. Why is she trying so hard to hide it? And the couple of documents when she had to file in that required her to state all her marriages. She states the first one she had before Jean-Michel Trogneux, but she did not state that of Jean-Michel Trogneux. She skips now to her current. So that is something that was to keep on the side of our head again, to remember. Also, around the time of the official divorce in 1987 between Trogneux and Veronique, it's around the time when Brigitte Macron starts her public service and start her traceable career as a teacher. Then 5 years later, magically meets the love of her life, allegedly, in quotes, because that's disgusting, gross, she. That's when she magically meets the love of her life, Emmanuel Macron. And speaking of the love of her life, Emmanuel Macron, Candace had a lot to say. Allegedly, Macron is not all that is cooked up to be. First, let's start up in school. In school, Macron was a terrible student. He was not bright at all, according to Candace's research. He was not bright at all. So not bright so much that when in school, while he was in a school called the ENA, that is a school like a finishing administrative school for top administrators in France. He was so terrible in class, and then at the end of the school year, they decided to put him at the top of the class. The students came out and rioted, said, "What do you mean? Are you trying to tell us that this guy who is so dumb, has no sense, knows nothing, is the one that topped this class?" God forbid, they went onto the streets, and because of that, for the first time ever, first time in history, the rankings of that particular exams were cancelled. Yep. And then when he left to go and work with the Rothschilds, which was first of all extremely complicated, because how did he get there? It was complicated. But once he got into the bank, it was difficult for him to still prove his worth, because simple things that every banker, everyone who is in a little bit of finances knew, no, Mr. Macron knew nothing about it. He was so terrible. But then, even though he was that terrible, the story of him to fake it to make until he makes it was what kept him going, because he kept on having promotions in the bank until before you open your eyes, he was now at the top of the bank as a managing partner. And the people in the bank were confused, and they said the only thing that seems to be making sense here is the fact that he is affiliated to the Rothschilds. And some people could think, well, that is allegations. Well, Mr. Macron himself has never hidden his love for the Rothschilds. At least he has statements in 2012 and sometimes that he has mentioned and said, well, they are the only people who ever understood him. Well, leave me alone. I'm just reporting. His rise in the bank surprised everyone. But then the way he left the bank to become an official again in public service was another thing that was extremely, very, very sketchy. Very sketchy. First of all, for him to have left public service before going into the banking system, there is a particular procedure he had to follow. That is to denounce his civil service before going into the banking system. And then when he's coming out, he has to also assume back his civil service status for him to become part of the public administration. But well, that did not happen for Mr. Macron, because Mr. Macron swept his way into and out of that place without any of those procedures. And people were saying this has never happened. These are things that are extremely, very, very confusing. And Xavier Poussard sums it up to say that it seems that one thing that has kept him going is the Rothschilds family. And the Rothschilds family is a family that is built on secrecy, incest, and a lot of things that we cannot get into in this video. Candace also says that the reason why the women who were involved in this case have been sued, but now Xavier Poussard has not been sued, is because Xavier Poussard uses tactics while women use their guts. So I guess that's why Candace is also now in a lawsuit. Well, makes sense. And then she says that the reason is because he uses an AI app. She now goes ahead to show us the tests that have been done to prove that this one is that one is not this one is not that one. The test they did for Brigitte Macron, testing against the pictures of Jean-Michel Trogneux as a baby, it showed that probabilities were higher. When they did a test for the picture, the communion picture that Brigitte presented as herself as a baby, probability was low. And then my problem is, why did they not just do a test to test the child, the little girl that was in the baby photo, to see that, okay, given she claims that this is her as a baby, does this match? Because they did not do that one. and they did it for, and I don't know, I'm just trying to be balanced here. I'm just trying to cut the things in both sides. Let's look at it in both sides. So they ran it for Brigitte, and they sure so that it's not giving what she thought it's giving. Then the relations of the individuals that surround these people are questionable. Everything is questionable. And she says that in the next episode, we are going to have Xavier Poussard himself, the original man giving us everything. You know what? Let's get into this. I cannot wait. This episode is titled Candace Owens and Xavier Poussard. And please, I want you to remember, on Candace Owens' YouTube channel, you will have just about 15 minutes of it. I had to go to her website, candaceowens.com, in order to watch the full interview, to watch everything, because there are a few things there that where YouTube is currently censoring. So that was the reason. And lucky for me, I went there. It was not behind a paywall, because if it was behind a paywall, God, I'm not sure I would have been able to pay that money. I don't have it, okay? I am not paid a dime to do this. I saw people in my comment section saying that Israel is paying me for this research. My God, I'm working for myself to put this information out there. No one is paying me, okay? I don't know. Is Israel paying people to do research? That is strange. Okay, let's get into it. This is how it happened. Xavier Poussard came on this interview, and he started by giving us a story, the story we have had of everything from the start to now. And he deliberately and coherently explained the story of how everything happened. Candace now asked him, who are you and why? How did this story come to you? How did you get attracted by this? And he said, I am naturally someone who is interested in public figures' unauthorized biographies, things they will not want out there. If someone drops it out there, he goes and does the research to make sure if it's true and then bring a spotlight to it. And unauthorized biographies, because those ones are not censored. The individual is not telling them, hey, don't talk about this. I don't like talking about that. Talk only about this. Because normally most people, when they're doing their authorized biography, some of them like to censor things and put a few things out. But when it's unauthorized, it has more juice to it. That's just the essence. So he said he is more interested in it. And one thing that happened is Brigitte Macron's unauthorized biography hit the press, and everybody was extremely confused in France, to say the least. People were seeing some discrepancies, not only in the fact that she sought out a student, a child in her class when she was teaching in Amiens, but also the fact that they were saying the ages and they were not making sense. People were saying that the boy was 17 and she was 36, but it was not making sense, but because a lot of people said it was looking more like the boy was 14 and she was 39. Another thing that happened in this is that there were a lot of dates that were not making sense in Brigitte Macron's autobiography. And all of this was happening when they were trying to prop up the image of Emmanuel Macron to sell it to the public of France. And then you might ask, but we are selling Emmanuel Macron's image. Why are we talking about Brigitte Macron's autobiography? Well, come back to it. The reason is because they were trying to sell Emmanuel Macron as the wonderful president, this guy who just came to be, who made himself up, propped himself up from nothing, and here he is. But then they could not sell that image because he has a banking history, and all his little ties to the Rothschild family and other big entities made it in a way that it will not be palatable to the French people. No, it was not going to be that tasteful. So they said, you know what? Let us look for somebody around him that will sell us the story. Who is that? No other person but his spouse. She is a feminist. She makes sense. Let us sell this love story of theirs. Let us sell Brigitte Macron and her family. She is from a chocolate family. They were making sweet, lovely, delicious chocolat. Qui n'aime pas le chocolat? Moi, j'aime le chocolat. Tout le monde aime le chocolat. On mange ça avec le croissant. Bois un peu de lait ou bien café. And everybody would drink it. And they said, okay, let's go into Brigitte Macron. That is how they entered Brigitte Macron's story. Started polishing her up, putting her in front of the public. Oh, this wonderful lady. She was so sexy and hot. They're very beautiful. Those sexy and hot are alleged. I don't know the French status and the French standards when it comes to sexy and hot women. I know I've seen French women. They are very beautiful and sexy. Les femmes françaises sont très sexy, jolies, magnifiques. Mais le magnifique et sexy de Brigitte Macron, ça ne donne pas, hein? Je ne sais pas. Peut-être c'est moi, ou bien peut-être que je ne sais pas, mais j'ai dit que ça ne donne pas. C'est tout que je dis. Le sexy là, je ne vois pas. Je ne vois pas sexy. So they were trying to say, oh, she was so hot, sexy, and beautiful, and all the boys were not finding it, they were finding it irresistible. Elle était très mignon, jolie. People were not seeing it. So all of that image we're trying to sell was not given. People started talking in France, complaining, but unfortunately, people don't speak loud. They only grumble. You know the underbelly grumble, the grumble where you don't want a lot of people to hear. That is the kind of grumble people were doing. They had to talk under the tables. Mais qu'est-ce que tu penses? Mon frère, je dis, est-ce que c'est normal? Et comment la femme, si elle est vieille avec un petit garçon, le petit garçon là, elle est 14 ans. 14 ans, je dis, elle est 39. Mais 40, c'est 40. And those are the kind of conversations French people were having, but they could not say it aloud. So some people tap Xavier Poussard. Mais mon frère, tu sais que toi, tu connais toutes les choses, si c'est les choses que tu aimes faire, mais pourquoi tu ne fais pas? And he said, tu sais, it's what I like to do, I will do it. And that is how Xavier Poussard carried himself outside. I said, you know what? I like doing these things. I will do it. He went out and started looking for documents. And while he was looking for documents for Brigitte Macron, family lineage, everything, he was hitting a brick wall. The French people also noticed another strange thing. When they were introducing the entire Brigitte Macron family, the Brigitte family, the chocolate family, the Brigitte Trogneux family that were making chocolate in Amiens, there is one thing that they were not seeing. Brigitte's brother, Jean-Michel Trogneux, seemed to have just disappeared. Il est disparu dans le public. On ne voit pas Jean-Michel Trogneux. Pourquoi? But then they are here, il fait le chocolat, il fait tout le café, il nous donne pour boire. Pourquoi? Il a rien ici. Où est Jean-Michel Trogneux? Il est où? And that is when people were also grumbling about. So Xavier Poussard started looking for documents about Jean-Michel Trogneux. He ended up somewhere. He got stuck where Jean-Michel Trogneux was enlisted in the army. And he said, but where is this guy? He couldn't find him. Lucky for him, there is this lady who has been doing a few investigations. She is just a normal citizen. She is not a journalist, but she was interested in this story as well, just as I am interested. Poor thing. We're talking about Isabella Ferrara. You remember her? The one who was sued? Yeah, that one. So Xavier Poussard got in contact with Isabella Ferreira and they spoke and she said, this is my findings. What do you think? Xavier Poussard said, oui, je pense que tu as fait un bon travail et on doit faire ça un peu de travail encore ensemble. They went into working together. Now the unfortunate thing is that Ferreira made a few mistakes in thinking somebody was not someone, saying that a someone who was in the wedding photo that was published. Remember that very infamous wedding photo? Yes, she made a mistake saying that that person was a cousin called Jean-Louis. You remember Jean-Louis, who they said he ended his days in a psychiatric hospital, surrounded by a guard. But his wife, on the day that they were at his funeral, which the daughter Tiffany made a mistake saying that he was buried, meanwhile he was cremated. The day of that particular burial, his partner or the woman he's been with said she saw the man's passport and a lot of money. He had withdrawn all money from his account and a passport stamped for Africa. We never know. Allegedly, it means he might be somewhere in Africa. Si tu es là, il faut nous dire salut. On est là, ensemble. So that very mistake was the one that took her into trouble. Not that they sued her for saying that she was a man or not a man who transgender. No. The reason she was sued is because she said she made the assertion, the error of that, saying that the person in that wedding photo is Jean-Louis, but it was not the cousin Jean-Louis, and that is what she was sued for. Macrons called Jean-Louis and said, sue that lady, we support you. Jean-Louis dropped the lawsuit. When I filed the lawsuit, they told him that they were going to support him. Then when he filed the lawsuit, I said, please, can you come and give me the support you said you are bringing? They said, tu sais quoi, on pense que tu vas faire ta part, on fait notre part et on fait ça séparément. Tu vois? Oui, bye bye. And that's where Jean-Louis was very pissed off and started giving small interviews to a couple of people, including Emmanuel Alisson. So, speaking of Ferreira now came together with some of the things she has done, spoke to Xavier Poussard. Xavier Poussard took it. He was writing a few articles here and there, but he was still very cautious and tactical because a lot of things were not making sense. And every time he dug into a rabbit hole, it took him to places he does not know how to come out of. It is a deep... Please, I encourage you to go and watch this thing from the beginning to the end. I swear you'll be lost 72 times. I have watched it 4 times to be able to piece together this story. I'm telling you, I'm serious. And it still doesn't make sense at all. Oh, Jesus. So when he had the conversations with Ferreira, and then a lot did not still make sense. So he went on, but he could not go further. Lucky for him, another person who wanted to debunk the journalists or people who were saying things about Brigitte, because they were saying that she felt like, no, they were just being sexist against Brigitte, is Emmanuel Allison. Emmanuel Allison, you remember Emmanuel Allison who wanted to do a debunking of something before and she fell into trouble? Yes, that is the story now that he was also explaining again. Emmanuel Allison came, looked into these things, said, no, you know what? I'm going to find out these things and debunk everything. Then Emmanuel Allison entered a hole and could not come out because there was nothing to debunk. Now, Xavier Poussard gave us something very interesting. He told Emmanuela Allison, the very respected journalist, he gave her 5 names of Jean-Michel Trogneux's classmates, former classmates, and said, look, I have narrowed them down from maybe 40 or 60 to these 5 names. Go and look at these people. These are people who could give you information. They will not talk to me because I come with a certain image. People look at me a little controversial, but you were respected and people know you are coming to back her up because she was going to back him up, not under any pretense. No, she wanted to debunk these things. So, and Xavier Poussard wanted to legitimately debunk these things too and put it to bed because everything was very controversial, conspiratory, and confusing. So he gave those names. 5 names from Jean-Michel Trogneux's classmates, 5 names from Brigitte Macron's classmate. Trust me. Do you know what happened? Brick wall. Nothing came out of it. Nothing came out of it. So Jean-Michel Trogneux was very confused, but there was something that happened that was very important that made his findings move ahead. There is a picture which he revealed, the very viral picture of Jean-Michel Trogneux, which is the last had a known picture of him at a certain age, about 18, which when you place side by side to Brigitte Macron, je vous dis, je ne dis rien, mais il faut regarder vous-même. Tu fais ton comment dans le comment section et tu me dis, qu'est-ce que tu penses? Est-ce que c'est moi seul qui vois ce que je vois ici? Peut-être mes yeux sont gâtés, mais il faut regarder. You look yourself and you tell me in the comment section what you see. I don't want to put anything in anybody's mind. Okay? Okay, let's move ahead. So that very picture was one thing that made him to know he was heading towards a certain path, and that path was one which was very valid. He took that picture and did a few comparisons. He tested it here and there, and he realized that, it was making sense. It gave him a good and very high percentage. Another thing he was able to discover is that when he tested it against the little girl in the photo, it did not give a high percentage with the AI. You remember I said before that, but I was wondering why did they not test it against the little girl just to be fair? But he said no, he tested it and he said no, it was not giving. It was not giving at all what he thought it would give. So he moved on with it. What happens now is this. He said another thing that made it very, very intriguing is the aspect that there was another lady in France called Amanda who had done the same thing Brigitte did, changing their name, changing a lot of things, but then she made a mistake sometime, and then somehow the true identity of hers was revealed and everything went boom. So this is the same thing he said people kept repeating. This lady, this is the case of Amanda. This is the same case. And that is what kept ringing in everybody's ears. So Xavier Poussard really explains all of this and told us that what he is doing is constantly working on this, and he has not given up because he has a lot of work to do. And if you would like to support him, he is on X, he's on other platforms. You can go and support him and let him keep on digging into this information. And I'm sure there are a couple of things I would have left out. I really encourage you all to go and watch those episodes for yourself. The pictures, it is a very, very intriguing story. I tell you, it is not an easy story. When you start watching it and digging and going down that rabbit hole, you cannot come out of it. It is too deep. Now, let's go to episode 7, the epilogue. This is the closing of the season. This is the season finale. This is when we have everybody sitting on the table and we are asking them, how are you? Ça va bien? Well, this season ended by Candace Owens on her channel. She just expressed the confusion we have all been feeling from the beginning to now. The background of Brigitte Macron, the mystique of Jean-Michel Trogneux. And then she also explains that when she was trying to dig into this, there in one of the letters that the Élysée Palace lawyers sent to her, they sent her a link of a video stating another man, a shorter man, gentleman, that he was Jean-Michel Trogneux. But from all the indicators, it seems he's not family, because he did not sit, one, with family, two, he was not really he was not in interaction with the family, and then three, Brigitte Macron basically ignored him when she was passing through. If it is Jean-Michel Trogneux, you were witness for his wedding, he was witness for your wedding, and you meet him, your brother, that particular brother of yours, during the inauguration of your husband, twice, you will not say, oh, hello, my dear brother, missing you. Another thing, another person who is also a mystery in all of this is another uncle of who? Emmanuel Macron. Guess what his name is? Please guess what his name is. His name is Jean-Michel Macron. God, when I tell you that si tu n'as pas le cœur, ne cherche pas cette histoire. Cette histoire, c'est l'histoire de la meurtre. Ha! There is another uncle of Emmanuel Macron called Jean-Michel Macron. And he was the godfather of Macron when he was having his baptism. But do you know what is going on here? That very uncle is nowhere to be found. The uncle, il est disparu. Il n'est pas là encore. Il n'est pas là. Oui, il est disparu. Then, another thing Candace was able to pick out was the aspect that the Trogneux family, that is Brigitte's family, most of the men, their names start with Jean. So they all have the name Jean Trogneux. Jean Trogneux. And the ladies all have some male names in the middle of their names. But for me, I don't know. This is me just playing both sides. I don't know how the naming in France go, but I know that many French countries and even African countries that are French, they have a lot of names in between their names, and they like having the lineages of linking each grandfather to the next generation. So for the names, I really don't know. And I also can see why she thinks that that is a play so that it can confuse people a lot, such that a Jean-Michel Trogneux can show up, which is a different Jean-Michel Trogneux from the one in Brigitte's family, in the family photo. Because one of the questions she actually sent back to the lawyers who sent her the complaint is asking them, Jean-Michel Trogneux you told me is in the inauguration. Is it the same Jean-Michel Trogneux who is in that picture, in the family picture of Brigitte Macron? Crickets. Crickets. Nobody said a word. And same goes for many of the questions she asked them. And also, we can see that this entire situation is brewing around the world. There are a lot of things that are incorporated in this story, because it's not just Brigitte's past. Emmanuel Macron's past, it seems to also have a couple of loopholes. And Candace kind of alludes to the aspect that she believes that Macron's parents are not actually his parents. And the grandmother, very strange grandmother. I don't know whose grandmother in this world has ever given them the kind of books Emmanuel Macron's grandmother gave them. If your grandmother ever gave you books like that, please let us know in the comment section. Because my grandmother gave me the Bible, gave me Bible stories books, gave me books. The only book she ever gave me that was really, really out there was a book about learning to be a young girl, learning to know about her as I was growing up as a teenager. She gave me a book like that. But I don't know which grandmother is giving their child books on people who were adoring things that have to do with PDF, little boys, playing around little boys' buttocks. La famille là, je ne sais pas, je ne sais pas, je vous assure, c'est quelque chose de très, très intéressant. In between this, there is also the aspect that there are documents which shows that Jean-Michel Trogneux, who has suddenly gone missing in public, allegedly, cannot be found. But the last time he was noticed was when he was enlisted in, is it Algeria or Morocco? Morocco. Yes, in the army in Algeria or in Morocco. Sorry. I think if I made a mistake, please let me, I'm not exactly sure now. Algeria and Morocco keeps coming up in this story and it's too confusing. Please. Anyway, right now, this is all we will say. There is also another family photo of Brigitte Macron's parents' 50th anniversary. During that 50th anniversary, which took place in 1991, guess who was not there, even though the others were all there? Jean-Michel Trogneux was not there. Brigitte was there. Also, during the Élysée Palace inaugurations of Macron as they sent the so-called videos and pictures that to prove that this is her, this is him. Also, where the family, the brothers, sisters, Brigitte and the brother and her siblings are sitting, guess who is not sitting there? The Jean-Michel Trogneux that the Élysée Palace sent in the letter saying that he is the one, the short guy. He's not sitting with that particular set of family. But do you know where he is found? He is found standing next to David Hochschild, allegedly. So the mystique of Jean-Michel Trogneux, the mystique of the real Brigitte Macron, with Brigitte Trogneux, the original little girl sitting on the lap of the mother in that original family picture, is still something that is still in search. And as she rounded up her series, she called for people to send her information on anything. And also, I'm going to also call, if I made a mistake in this, please drop it in the comment section to help others. And also, I encourage you to go to her page and watch more of this. Any part that you felt I didn't explain properly, I'm sure probably you understanding more from her or from Xavier Poussard, because he really very eloquently explains everything. And it would be really lovely if you could go there and you follow it up. Thank you very much for following this up with me. I am very happy that I was able to put this together so that those who don't have the time to go and be clicking one video after the other or finding where it started, because it is so many videos after so many videos and sometimes it's complicated. So I decided to put all of it together, explain it in my own easy way that I thought you could understand, so that it makes it comprehensive. Now we are waiting for part 2 because she is about to drop season 2. Candace, please don't fail us. It's supposed to be tonight. So I'll probably edit this video. This is Monday, 8 p.m. I'll probably edit this. If I finish editing this by today night or morning, I will upload it. Or tomorrow I upload. I've been working on this video for almost 5 days. Please pray for me. All right. Thank you very much for coming to the end of this. Please like, please subscribe, share the video. And until next time, bye.